It's maybe the most ludicrously exciting clash of the year. Maybe the fixture of the World Cup so far. This Sunday night, defending champion South Africa take on home nation and tournament favourites France for the chance to keep dreaming. And in order to preview this game, in order to look ahead, in order to get stupidly excited about it, I was joined from a hotel room in La Rochelle by my brother and channel co-man, analyst, wonderful, excellent Will, and former Oval Insights and Gloucester analyst, Conor Wilson of the channel Wibble Rugby, to dig into what to expect, what might happen, and first deliver some rather big news.
Here's the really big thing, right? Because there is one headline, and we'll get into bloody analysis and tactics and all of that later on, right? But there's one thing I think above all else dominates the conversation around this game and has been dominating the lead up to this conversation, to this game, for such a long time, especially here in France, where it's genuinely headline news. France's likely team has leaked out. Ooh. And do you know who's at scrum half?
Is it Maxime Lucu?
Antoine Dupont.
Whoa.
Captain.
I can see that. Yeah, I mean, you don't not play Dupont.
Obviously, hot take. Massive news. It's been a national emergency over here in France. We've tasted all of it.
Genuinely, like a week later, third headline on the main news was Antoine Dupont's cheek might be okay.
Yeah.
God, the rugby gods came through. And it's good because you want Dupont. You want players like Dupont. You want the best players in the world playing.
I think there was a world in which they put him on the bench and they stuck with Maxime Lucu. And Maxime Lucu has been perfectly good. You know, he's a very good player. He's perhaps far more conservative than Dupont. But the interesting thing about Antoine Dupont in the last few years is the way in which he has built out the rest of his game so thoroughly. He was always a freakish attacking player, but he's become the best game management nine in the world as well, right? And the thing that suddenly changed is the Springboks are such a team built on the way they kick. We have seen them kicking higher and higher kind of phase count-wise. So traditionally in the last World Cup, it was fourth, fifth, maybe sixth phase at a push. South Africa kicked it, right? Every time. And this was in an era where teams were regularly keeping the ball for 14, 15 plus phases. South Africa had none of that and would get rid of it. And everyone's kind of taken that since. France in particular, who like to keep the ball after 3 phases usually, you know, they do it most on time as much as anything. And Dupont coming in gives them a really different kicking option. Maxime Lucu is a far more traditional kind of, he'll put box kick in the air, he'll put a lot of hang time on it. Dupont has the option of kicking off by either foot. He's so alert, so aware. The way he scans, the way he looks, you know, that try Pano scored where Dupont is being taken off balance and manages to put a cross kick in off a maul. Just the sheer range of options you've then got to watch in the kicking game defensively in South Africa changes almost everything, changes more than the actual need to target him defensively.
Genuinely, that makes such a difference, though, that South Africa are also, once again, a team, as well as kicking, they're so built on putting pressure on kickers, you know, having Eben Etzebeth and Franklin Mostert, who are arguably, aside from maybe Maro Itoje, you can add into this mix, the best at charge downs and pressurizing and making halfback shank kicks in the world. With Dupont, he's doubling his chances because he could just pick which side he wants to kick off, you know, especially if he's on the left-hand side. Usually he would just, as most convenient, kick off his left. However, this time, if he wanted to, if he spotted that Etzebeth is lurking and on the other side is somebody shorter, I don't know, like Faf, let's say, he could just pop it over on his right and be completely fine. It's just that man has an unprecedented level of talent, which he can just use as a backup.
Obviously, France, the team in particular, have got so much like that they don't rely necessarily on doing the conventional. They don't rely on the structure. They don't rely specifically on a coach's game plan. They have the freedom to make their own decisions, maybe to a little bit more of a higher degree than others do, because they can break the structure rather than just following it in a different way. That's where he'll go, okay, left foot, there you go. You know, no blocker. But then I don't know if, so I just don't see, admittedly, I don't see South Africa loading both their locks on each side of the ruck, because especially considering like Etzebeth is part of their chasing line on exit.
And you have to get back into shape after that, you know.
Exactly.
And I think a lot of it comes on the breakdown. France are a team that really target turnovers, not just slowing the ball down. Like they're quite happy to bounce out and then blitz out. You know, the very Sean Edwards system. rather than necessarily looking to slow the ball down every phase. They're quite happy to just like push, and then target threats when they come up.
Look, South Africa bullied Scotland at the breakdown. You know, you're right, they've not been tested, but it's not only that, they have been testing other people. France are a team that thrive on quick ball to the extent at which they sometimes just eradicate rucks. They sometimes just, you know, will stick the ball through their legs. They'll offload out of any contact. Gregory Aldry is particularly good at this, as well as Daunty. We don't know if France will present the opportunity to be tested at the breakdown, you know?
We know what opportunities are as well, though.
The opportunities are fucking enormous. Make no mistake.
Pretty big at least.
I when you mentioned Aldry in particular, I think they're gonna hurt. I think they're gonna target him so much. I just think they are gonna go for Aldry. Like, that man is a king of turnovers, and just their dynamics in terms of turnover attack. You know, the way that they've got players who can come in at the line, like Ramos, who can come in, like, you know, pretty much on late swing. You've got Jalibert. They're so quick and so bloody good to like change over, transition in particular. Yeah, for me, it's just Aldry is going to be targeted like crazy simply because how good he is, how often he comes from the inside, and I just think that they're going to keep him away from the game at all costs. It's impossible to do the whole time, but running at him, holding on to him in the rucks, trying the island tactic as well, like, you know, like laying on him if they can, getting him to ground. You know, I see that happening a lot this weekend.
Which I think a lot of that comes down to how the two teams like to attack, because I think they're very different attacks, and yet they're kind of growing in similar directions from very different starting points. Both of them like to attack for short bursts. Both of them like to have a few phases of really concentrated attack, and then they'll kick the ball away, and then they'll get rid of it. South Africa keeping it for longer and longer periods, France for shorter and shorter. They're kind of starting to meet in the middle. And what we could be seeing is two teams with completely different philosophies on the game, ultimately almost cancelling each other out because they play in a fairly similar manner in the end.
With all of this has led me on quite nicely. Could I present to you a quick analysis point
Please.
From the Scotland-South Africa game? Because it's quite relevant to the whole thing about the breakdown and how South Africa, I wouldn't say innovate, but how they're always thinking one step ahead to that. So here we're looking at Scotland. Literally, this is one of the first attacking phases of the game, and they're trying to run from sort of just outside their own 22. So they've gone from 8 to 9, and 9's carried out looking to engage Faf here. And basically, the play is Tuaplotu runs a hard line. Then they're looking to thin out the boot, and Duhan van der Merwe also coming into the line. And obviously, you can also look at Hugh Jones is going to probably run a hard line off Finn Russell if you're looking at that. Tuaplotu, as expected, has run this hard line. He has received absolutely no attention from the Springboks here. They have not been interested at all in that hard line. So Libbok has pushed off him completely. He's way outside him. And Damien Dialande is the person in particular I want to focus on here. He does an exceptional job. So he's gone past Tuaplotu, and Tuaplotu, if he runs a good line, is probably hoping to engage both of these guys. And he's not even interested in Russell. They've done that good a job. So Libbok's got Russell completely, and he's slightly shallower in the line than Libbok. So here, in theory, he's looking at Jones, okay? The ball goes out the back to Duhan van der Merwe, and Duhan van der Merwe, being an absolute freak, probably poses a similar threat to Damien Penaud if we're going to localise it to this game. Deolande isn't the person who's made this tackle, so he's already kind of triple jobs. Instead, it's a combination of Colby and Creel who make the tackle on Duhan van der Merwe. Damien Deolande, having, as I say, slightly shallower in the line, is lurking around, and he has to assess here whether to fold and go blind, whether to stay where he is, or to even contest the breakdown. In the end, he opts to contest the breakdown. He spots that Graham's out there on his own. He's probably got Willemse covering him. Granted, it slightly compromises the backfield, but if he manages to disrupt the breakdown well enough, then it ultimately doesn't matter. Because ultimately his job at this point is to slow Scotland's ball down. And he has done that by avoiding Tuaplotu, avoiding Jones, and avoiding Finn Russell. He's managed to get to that breakdown and work that little bit harder, that little bit smarter, just by avoiding all those people. It's completely had a knock-on effect on how South Africa are going to defend for the phases that go beyond the first one. And so it ends up that from Deolande's contest here, the ball ends up squirting out, and Ben White is in all sorts of trouble here. So he has Franco Mostert coming to smother him. And at this point, he's hoping to maybe either kick the ball or get back into shape. Finn's barking for it. Darcy Graham's slightly in the way. The whole Scottish attack has been compromised by Damien Dialande. But what does happen is Ben White picks the ball up and gets nailed by Franco Mostert. And Scotland have a couple of very messy phases with Finn Russell having to come in at 9. And the whole thing is completely compromised. Because Damien Dialande, if you include the breakdown, quadrupled jobs on that first phase.
But this is the difference, a big difference between Scotland and France, right? Is Scotland continue playing there. They continue playing off bad ball and trying to keep hold of it and trying to turn it into good ball. France will not do that. France will kick immediately.
Yeah.
They are drilled incredibly hard to kick the moment something goes badly or the moment they feel like it might be about to. You look at that game against the All Blacks and how regularly and how early they're kicking, almost always off players that aren't Jalabert as well, on off 9 or 10. They've got the other players slotting in. You know, they've got Fiku kicks an awful lot this World Cup in a way he wasn't a couple of years ago. He's now
Obviously
become
Ramos,
really the kicking
you know.
option. Yeah, Ramos or Jaminet slots in at the back, and then you have both wingers as well who love to slide for a little kick. The way Damien Penna has become a kicking option this World Cup is one of the really interesting things about France's evolution.
Yeah. With Antoine Dupont at 9, it kind of changes this whole thing because right there, Maxime Lucu might find himself in a similar situation to what we just saw with Ben White. But actually, with Antoine Dupont, he thrives with those situations where he's got defenders swarming in on him, and he's got forwards around him who he can offload to. And this whole submerger tactic that you in particular have spoken about a lot, Connor. Not only that, but obviously he's got a range of kicks. He can kick off either foot if he's got pressure on him.
Dupont doesn't need to send it to Finn Russell to do the cross kick.
No,
he doesn't.
He can skip out the minimum.
Off messy ball himself, he can bounce the tackle of Mostert and drop that on his toe.
Yeah.
Either toe.
It's going to be interesting, to say the least, because I think that, you're right. They won't go from there. They will go into their kicking strategy. There's no doubt in the mind about that. But last thing, like against Italy, I remember that's the only time I think I've seen France like play out of their half for a very long time, like for a very, very long time. I think they went 12 plus phases, and I'm not saying they didn't respect Italy, but I think they were like, we can get away with doing this on here, or maybe I don't know if they're actually showing something like if we're 6 points down at the end of the game and we've got to, we're in our own 22 and we've got to take it to the line.
I think there's a combination of, Italy don't really kick the ball, so you're not in danger of losing 20 meters if you get a turnover. They're probably going to run it back at you for a while, and you can just set a 40-man line and smother them till they knock it on.
And they play so deep
every team
that
did against
knock-on
them.
will be 20 meters further back,
Exactly, yeah. But then the other side is I think there's a level of litmus test of just going, can we get away with this? Like, that was their first try of the game. It was the opening 2 minutes of the game. They managed to create a try through like 12, 13 phases or something. I don't have it, off the top of my head. That was basically something unheard of for France in the last 2 years. Like, they haven't done that. They don't keep the ball for that long regularly. It was really different. And I think a bit of them was going like, okay, is this going to work in this game? And we might see that on Saturday. They looking at it and going like, okay, can we systematically break South Africa down? Which is the way teams were doing it 4 years ago. If a team was going to score a try against South Africa, it was either first phase or it was like 18th phase. And it was very rare that a team scored in between. It was either really long passages or really short passages. And they may have a go at doing the longer one, even though it's very, very, very against the grain at the minute. It's not the way teams are going. It's not the way things are working. And it's not the way France have been playing.
No, it's not. Not in the slightest. I think there's a huge element for going wide against the box, if you can. The French stretch formation is perfectly, if they play deep enough, the box are so reliant on that inside drift, after their adjusting defenders are bitten in. That inside drift, corner flagging, bending, not breaking, basically getting there in numbers and smothering or ruining any chance, of the that's why Khaleesi, in that example there, Will, if Van der Merwe had offloaded, then Khaleesi was carrying on corner flagging, going to smother it out. They have, as we know, that system has backups to backups to backups, basically. They've been doing this system since 2018 now. They're so well drilled at it. No one has really come up with a foolproof way of beating it.
There have been odd moves that have really worked, and then South Africa have learnt from them and adjusted to those individually. And we've seen teams try and run moves, that have worked against them previously. The All Blacks did it last year, where they were running moves Australia scored off a year earlier, and suddenly South Africa are smart to it and they're wise to it, and that defense just learns. It's like what we talk about, the dangers of AI. Like, they're permanently learning and just getting smarter and more intelligent.
But as for I mean, for example, it's just a responsibility they've given DuPont, not just captaincy, but like it builds into a tactic I'm going to show you that I think South Africa will bring back later. But DuPont is now defensive captain of the short side. The fact that he looks after that short side is another reason that they're going to target him as well, because I think that was something that Ireland didn't do that South Africa would have picked up. I think we will see some 11-21 patterns specifically. No, correction. Not 21 patterns, 11 patterns, because I think that 21 gives them too much time for DuPont to get back into the game and actually reset that short side. Whereas 11, you hurt him, or you take him out, or you isolate him. I actually do wonder against South Africa whether, I know that a Sean Edwards defense is geared to keeping the ball in, to like actually keeping the ball in play, overwhelming with their fitness. I believe that's the way they played under Wales for many years, wasn't it?
Yeah. Ball was in play for as long as possible.
Yeah.
Wales are playing that way in this World Cup as well. They want the ball infield, really high work rate, just
really
pressure.
Defense.
I think that if they try the same thing, because there's a tactic, and I'm just going to share my screen here. Ball goes up, and the first stage for the South African chase is to regather. Ideally, if they can regather, that's a win-win.
Perfect.
Liam Williams, this is 2021, and I think this is going to be shown because I think this is going to be performed because South Africa almost got this reputation now of being a little bit like more evolution. They've evolved. They've become far more than what they were. But this tactic is still in the background. And I think, especially if you take out DuPont or DuPont isn't in the mix, it can cause problems because the stage 2 is pressure, post-tackle action, stay in the fight, reefing. Reefing is essentially keeping the ball. So, for example, trying to wrap the ball, wrap up the carrier's arms, strip if you can, but ultimately trying to prevent them getting offload away or like basically taking them to the ball in that position so that they can't just put the ball straight back at their feet, which obviously is what France is so bloody good at with their ball presentation. Obviously, at this point, jackal assist if they can get it. Usually, the South Africans only jackal assist if they can in the centre of the field to try and get penalties in front of the post. So that's when they usually do their jackal assists. Did it against England and did it against Wales in 2021 as well. So Wales are now going into their exit strategy. And what South Africa have done really well is that they've analysed the short side chase line. They've analysed the exit. So if you have a look here, Reece Lightning starts coming in. Well, that's his nickname at Gloucester, but he comes in and he's obviously going for the ball.
It's the way Wales like to chase is really heavily having the winger blitz through the middle of the obstruction to almost run into them to make a point of showing no, I'm getting there, not buying, not falling for it. Like Josh Adams is really good at it. Reece Adams has become really good at it in the last year or two. Yeah.
But the thing that I noticed that if you look on the short side, it's a set exploit, stage 3. You've got Mapimpi and Am, who are incredible players, as we know. And if you play along, they look up. Am, if you have a look back right there, so 9-12, I'll go back to. So look at this. So he looks there. He looks at Faf de Klerk. He looks at the line in front of him. And then he goes back to Faf. He's shouting. He's shouting, and Faf hears it. And it's literally some of South Africa's best attackers against tight 5 forwards and Toby Faletau.
And Faf's not even had to look. He's not even had to glance.
Yeah.
He can pick the ball up and go straight there, knowing what's set up for him.
Now, South Africa, okay, they've used this before. But
this may be familiar to some folk.
Yeah, so Anthony Watson comes in, doesn't go back to where he is meant to be, and guess who's out there? Am and Mapimpi. He doesn't go back to where he's meant to be, and it's type 5 forwards against Am and Mapimpi. And obviously we know how this ends. But
and that's the thing though, that South Africa set up on the outside of if you go back to the initial angle, South Africa set up outside the furthest England defender. So the first player taking the ball here being Am. He is on the outside of Marler, meaning that when they draw and give, when they stretch out, Peter Toy wisely gets out of his own way, out of the way of everything, rather than trying to create an extra number. You don't need the numbers, you need the space. So he fixes the first guy, I think it's George Cruz. Then the next guy, you've got Marler, that Marks can take, and it gives him a Pimpy just the time to put in that kick.
And that's
eventually,
it. Like, Am's pass is like 2 meters, and it takes out like 2 or 3 defenders.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And then, like, obviously Ben Young's here. He's obviously launched the kick. He's not in the line, and that's why I do think that if France have learned from this, they'll have learned from Wales. Because you have a look, Hendrickse sends it up here, and it's regathered. So stage 1 is complete. But if you have a look here, it's paused, but Esterhazen is actually already going out, like backtracking. He starts immediately, and Zamo, he doesn't even have to look. He just looks back. He knows that Esterhazen is is what's on, and he knows he's going to try and go out and carry on here, and you play along. So he's like obviously looking. But if you have a look at Hendrickse, he's like, is it on? Is our standard play on? And obviously, Esterhazen goes, no, I'm covered. I mean, I think you've got Anscombe in the backfield. Anscombe here actually shoots into the backfield. He's looking. He shoots into the backfield really quickly to make sure that the kick doesn't happen. Wales was so wise to it. And I think that in the heat of battle, obviously South Africa do a huge, brilliant, good job here. But I think if you want Wales stop the dynamics really well, but so that's really that. I mean, the next stage goes into the next stage goes into Adams, like identifying it and filling it, like pointing to Toby Falatat's first priority after a kick. If Antoine Dupont has made the kick, and one thing that the South Africans love doing is taking out the 9 after the pass or tackle or kick or tackle has been made. They really love doing it. Because it stops ruck speed, and if they think that if we can bait like a young 20-year-old winger like Barret to come in on us, and we can get Dupont out of the game long enough that he can't do his job, then short side may be on.
Biarrit's got 5 caps now.
Yeah.
He is the person you could exploit. Dami Mpenu, you think, is been around the block enough and is good enough that he will look out for that as a ploy, because he will have been caught out with that at some point before. Biarritz being a 19-year-old kid, it makes you wonder.
South Africa have undergone an evolution. They play some really fast. They play different rugby now. They're happy keeping the ball in hand, but South Africa will never, ever, ever go away from their DNA. Ever. That's why they're so good.
If Bill Beaumont wasn't coming around my house talking about rugby values every evening in order to prevent me using footage, then if that Ireland video had been kind of in the normal format, I think there was something me and Will kept picking up on, was just how bloody good Jesse Kriel was in defence.
Yeah.
He was unreal. And there would have been, I think, a big section on just because I spent so much of the video looking at how South Africa did such a good job of shutting Ireland down. And they've been doing the same thing with the French attack, right? And we have seen the submerger strategy, that tactic where France will, and a lot of people will be very familiar with this, they'll have someone with a big lads will carry, and they just have people on their shoulder constantly taking offloads, taking short passes, taking pops off the ground, or in the case of Gregory Aldrit, who's the best presenter of the ball you'll ever see in your life, picking the ball up and keeping it going. And eventually it ends up in the hands of Antoine Dupont, and he runs it in and he scores. And that's the way it normally goes. It's just like a brilliant tactic for condensing a defense, opening up space elsewhere, and also just like getting defenders on the floor and making them retreat and changing the line where the defense is set, how the defense is set constantly, right? The thing is, South Africa, A, love double tackles, B, are so set on that like physical domination of the gain line that
they hate anyone coming through the middle of them. They will outright try and deny that.
And the other thing that's really interesting is you look over the last couple of years, right? And teams that have got in behind France and done really good jobs. So the All Blacks did it in 2021, and Wales did it in the Six Nations this year in that first 20 minutes. I think people have largely forgotten, but Wales had a really good 20 minutes where they scored the tries. Only time over the Galtier-Edwards era that France have conceded a bonus point. They've conceded 4 tries in the Six Nations was against Wales this year. Wales did the submerger constantly against them. It's part of why it's effective, I think, is like it was the most effective thing against their own defense. And I think there's a decent chance we see South Africa pulling France's own tactic and running it against them with the bloody size and impact of their carriers, what they can offer. Quagga Smith
They're
feels
the
like
team that
perfectly
do
set
this.
for this.
Yeah. Like
And
they see
like-
it as an insult that someone could possibly do that against them.
Yeah. And so I think there's a good chance we see South Africa pulling
I
a
like
few
it.
of France's own tricks and just shoving them back in their face in a very Razzie style, which is probably built even more on direct and power. And instead of offloads, it's like short pick and goes. It's like clean ball presentation. It's only not really looking for a clear out, looking to just do one-on-one tackles where you're hitting the ground quickly and getting it down so that someone can keep going. It's like really, really quick continuity between forwards, usually leaving the scrum half out of this.
Tonga have proved, because South Africa's willingness to use double hits in particular does open them up. It happened in England against England in 2019. It's how they got the momentum to get into the 22s. And Tonga used it religiously. They absolutely used it religiously against South Africa. Didn't score from it, but got to a positions where they did score from it. And it got broke into the South African 22.
The most tries South Africa conceded in the World Cup since Japan in 2015.
Exactly. I would see South Africa running that, if they do run that, which is an option, running it around the 15-meter line, trying to sucker in defenders, and then using that blind. Because if you can occupy Dupont, because Dupont, if there's one weakness Dupont's game, is that he overworks. His primary aim, obviously, in defense is to be guarding that short side, to be organizing it, to be making sure that everyone's in a line, that they've got the right, their alignment's good, their width, their spacings is all right, they've got their marked up. But if you're too busy going backwards or dealing or arranging the ruck or arranging the fringes, and then suddenly they overwhelm and they start coming through, they start doing Khaleesi stuff, kits off, really just great leg drives. You start panicking, or you start, just trying to stop that. Then before you know it, out wide and blindside.
This is the thing, right? I don't care about predictions normally because I'm just well, you're just guessing, aren't you? Ultimately,
it's completely pointless.
Ultimately, the interesting thing is how the two teams are going to play. To me, and I think we've laid out quite a range of ideas, of things they could be doing, of ways it could be going. All of these could be right. None of them could be right.
Oh, it's going to be a good one.
It's going to be good. It's going to be good. Very excited. Very ready. Sunday night, 9 p.m. in good old sweet Paris, or Paris as we call it everywhere else in the world. Conor, thank you very much for joining us. Do you have any other unbelievable insight to offer at the very last second?
Not really. I'm just, like I say, one thing I will echo is that as analysts, we can only predict and hope that we understand what the tactics will work and whether they'll work. We don't know we have no idea how well they'll execute them or who will. So when we say this winning, these are the things that I believe, because I think that the teams will execute them. But I don't know. It's so hard to predict these. I'm being asked for prediction. I'm okay.
Exactly. It's awful, isn't it? It's just
it's completely pointless.
You can kind of talk around it, but I mean, you say, you call yourself an analyst. I would call myself an idiot. But I'd
also call you an idiot.
Thank you. And thank you to everyone that's got through all of this. Thank you. I hope there's many rugbies and there'll be more coming, because you know what I've got to say?
What?
Rugby.
Nice. I like that.